Hi everyone, welcome back to the OmniStudio series. In today's session, we are going to talk about set value action in OmniScript. So let's get started with it. So I have created one set value OS, and we can find out the set value action in the actions at the very bottom. Okay, and if you remember from the last video that you can put any action on the step and as well as before or after the step, right? So if you put on this step, then it will be a button, and if not, then it will be automatically executed. Okay, cool. So let's look at what we have in the set value. So I have added in the top of this step, not on in this step. And here you can see that we have like element value, right? So what does that mean? And we will be declaring variables, and we will be like initializing the variables and performing the operation with the variables. Okay, so set values you can consider uh, pretty much similar to the every other programming languages that you have worked on, be it LWC, Apex, or Python, Java, right? Every programming language does have the variables and values, right? Assignment. And similar to this, we are going to create two variables here. So input 1, and here I will assign a value of 2, and I will create one more variable, right? So in every set value action, you can create multiple variables, and every variable will be available on the parent node. So I have created two variables, and if I go and preview it, I should able to see these variables and their values here. And why we have the values? Because we dropped the set value action top of this, right? So that's the reason. Before step 1 got executed, the action was executed first. Okay, so it's just simple. We have assigned it, we can say it, right? Now let's time to perform some operations on it, like some formulas. Okay, before I do that, so let's create output where. Okay, so here we have two options, like value that we already did. Value is value, just right. It can be anything. It can be string, it can be like number as well. But if you want to do some calculation, or if you want to apply some formula, then you can click on this checkbox and provide your formula, right? So what I will be doing here, I will be adding the two numbers that we have. Okay, so input 1 plus input 2. Okay, so we have two variables, input 1, input 2, and we have third variable where we are putting input sum of the input 1 and sum of the input 2. Okay, so let's delete this one and preview it. So in normal language it should work, right? But here it is not working. The reason is that because everything that you are doing is in the same step, right? So that's the reason it won't execute it here, right? Because the execution order can be different here. Like if, as you saw that in preview, that output where executed first and then input 1, input 2, right? So if you are doing something like this, my suggestion would be create another set value action. Okay, and then do that calculation there. So you know what I will do is, from this I will remove the output where, and from here I will remove the inputs. Okay, so in first step we are declaring two variables, and second step actually, we are declaring another third variable, but with the sum of the two numbers. So if I preview it, so now you can see that we have output where is a 5, right? And if we want to show that output where on this step, it will be simpler, like use the display element and then use the output where, right? So there are a lot of functions that you can utilize here. Formula functions, those are available. If you go back and if you want to see what formulas you have, like click on it in function formula and click on OmniScript functions. So ABS, these are number formulas, right? Then you have some of the text, and you can do if else or and, right? Everything you can do. So all those formulas can be utilized in the set value action here. Okay, so this is simplest example of your set value. Okay, now another thing here is that, like, what happens if you declare the same thing? Like, so if I clone it, right, and if I provide input here as a 5 and input here as a 5 as well. Okay, so we are declaring same kind of variable here and here as well. Okay, but with the different value. So eventually it won't give any error, but it will override the values. So input 2 is 5, input 1 is 5, because first step got executed and input 2 was something around 3 and 2, and now input 2 and 1 are like 5 and 5, then output where is 10, right? So yes, you can utilize same name of variables in multiple set value action. Okay, and now there is a hidden thing. So if you go here, edit JSON properties as JSON, right, you will see that this is how your entire set value action is configured, right? And you can see your input 2 is 5, input 1 is 5, right? But let's say if you want to store some complex data structure in JSON node, that you directly cannot do in here, because it will just accept some kind of number or string, right? Not as a JSON data. If you store something like this, it will store as a string. So if I go and if I like to inputs, and in inputs I will have two things. First, and in the first variable I'm defining 2, and in the second variable I'm defining, let's say, 5. So this is our normalization, where we have like input first node, then we have another object into the input like first var, second var, and save it. Okay, let's preview it. So you see, it is stored as or it is saved as a like text, not as a JSON data structure, right? So what you can do here is, I'll clone it and I will revert this input back to the 2 or 5, whatever it was. Okay, and here JSON, well, I'll name it so it can stand out differently here. Okay, here rather than creating two inputs, what I will do is I will just create one input called input. Okay, and in the input, instead of JSON, what I will do, I'll edit property as JSON. Okay, and instead of 5, I will write my object something like this. So input have another input, then first var, second var. Okay, and close JSON editor, and I will delete the input too. Okay, so now we have only one variable input, and yes, because we entered it like directly manually through the JSON, right, editor, but we cannot now edit here, right? So every time if you have to edit, right, you need to go to the edit property as JSON and update there. Okay, and now we will do a sum of variables that are stored here. Okay, before we do that, let's look at the preview and let's look at how the data is stored now. So we have two variables, input 2 and input 1. Then we have one more variable where we have input, and then we have a node again, input, second var and first var. Okay, now we are going to sum these two. So here I'm going to clone and sum of JSON where JSON sum. Okay, so we have a variable called input. Then in that variable we have another node called input, and then we have first var, and we have second var. So I'll just confirm once again. So here input I is capital, and here also I is capital. So I'll go back and I will update I here. Okay, so now let's go back and preview it. So you see this, we are getting correct answer like 5 and 2, so that is 7, right? So that's pretty much it on, like, if you are utilizing set value as a where, right? Now the second example that we have here is working with set values along with the input elements of the OmniScript, right? So for example, if you have something that you want to default, right? So what I will be doing here is we are going to build a normal calculator. Okay, so I will put two number fields. So we have number one, number two. Okay, and I will create a select option for the operator, and I will add the operators here, like for some. Okay, and I will have a display box so I can show the result. The result is, and let's say we are going to create a variable called result. Okay, we don't have yet, but we are going to create it. Okay, so now we have number one, number two, and select. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do here is like default the number one and number two with 0, and default this operator with addition. Okay, so yeah, we can do this from here as well, right? But let's do this from the set value. Okay, so I will drag another set value. I'll say calculator defaults. Here now, if you click on it, you will able to find your input variables. Number one, okay, I will defaulting with 0. And there is one more thing that you will see, like as soon as you select any of the element, right, not just a variable, it will also give you the type of that, right? So if I go back here, you won't see any element type here, right? Because all of them are variable, and there is no way that you can define that if it is number or a string. But here, if you select any element of the OmniScript, it will automatically pick up the element type. Okay, so we have number one, number two as a 0, and the value of operator we want to keep plus as a by default. Okay, so let's preview it. So we have 0 0, and by default operator we can see is plus. Okay, so now let's go back and add our set value, and set value will be uh, moreover your action button now, right? Because we want user to click this button instead of automatically executing it, right? We will do both ways. You know what, let's do first button, and then once we are done with it, we will do the same set value as a automated step. Okay, so I'll name it calculate. Okay, and here, as we are supposed to create a variable called result, so I will create a variable called result here, and I will use expression. Okay, so I will do this thing in like a Visual Studio Code, and then we'll paste it here because there is some problem with it, right? As soon as you type something wrong, it gives big error and you won't able to type anything here, right? So let's prepare this entire condition in Visual Studio. So I have opened my Visual Studio now, and let's look at it. So we have two variables so far. We have number one, and we have number two, and we have another variable for the operator. Okay, so if operator is plus, then we want to add these numbers, number one plus number two. If not, then we will check the next available operator. Okay, so if it is minus, then number one minus number two, and if it is not that, then we will look for the another operator. So if we have divide, we will divide, and if not, then we will do multiplication. Okay, and if we don't have multiplication selected, then we will put default or false as a 0. Okay, and so we have 4 if starting, and we are closing all of them, 1 2 3 4. Okay, so now our condition is ready. I will move everything in one line, because if you have in multiple line, then it might not work there, right? So I'll go back and copy this and paste it here, click on save, and then hit the preview button. So if I provide 2 plus 3 and operator is plus, calculate, yep, we can see the result is 5. And if I change the operator, 4 minus 3, we can see result is coming like that. And if we do calculate, yep, and 2 calculate, yeah, and divide, yep, everything is working perfectly fine, right? And as I told you, like, what if we drag this here, right? And to show this in action, I will add one more set value or step. Okay, and instead of putting the result here, or let's keep the result here as well as on the next page as well. Okay, and this set value is doing exactly the same thing that this button is doing. Okay, So I'll preview it, and 5 and 5. Now I'm not going to click on calculate. I will just click on next. So the result got calculated. If I go back and change it to like minus or keep it 10 and then click on next, the result is getting calculated, right? Simple. It will, this set value is getting executed and then we are accessing that variable, right? So that's it on the set values. See you in the next session. Bye bye.